Hi, everybody. This lecture is the next part in our series about learning about the world's food supply. For the past few weeks, we've been looking at the global nutrition and the world's food supply and analyzing strategies for feeding billions of people. We've talked about industrialized agriculture and how that has grown to be a very efficient means of producing large amounts of food, larger and larger amounts of food on small amounts of space. And that has allowed us to be one of those issues that increases our the carrying capacity of the earth. But we've also learned that this type of agriculture, industrialized agriculture, also has a list of problems and impacts associated with it: air pollution, land degradation. And that was your assignment last week, to look at some of those issues and elaborate on them. And we'll talk about potential solutions to those problems and how we can kind of mediate some of those issues as we continue industrializing our agricultural process to feed a growing planet full of people. And we've talked a lot about plant crops, but this lecture is primarily on livestock and the livestock portion of our agricultural system. And it's important for several reasons. And it's important for its environmental impacts and its nutritional significance, and for some of the ethical issues that it raises, and some of the social and environmental impacts of livestock. As Americans, we eat more meat than anyone else in any other country. So these issues are more applicable to us as Americans than anyone else. If you remember from our food web lectures, you can you lose energy as you go up the food chain, right? Because every organism on every level, every trophic level of the food chain, loses some of the energy that it obtains and uses some of the energy it obtains for itself, for its own living processes, loses some as heat. And if you remember from those lectures, every time we move up the food chain, you lose 90% of the energy from that previous level. So when we are eating livestock animals that are higher up on the food chain than plants are, that means that there's two inputs there. There's the input for the plants, and then there's the input for the animals that are eating the plants. And between grazing, livestock that graze and eat the plants themselves, or humans growing the plants and feeding it to the livestock take up a large amount of the planet's land, and feeding them is a major issue. So when we grow plants, we can either eat those plant crops ourselves, or we can feed those plants to livestock animals and then eat the meat, the dairy, the eggs from those animals. So they're higher up on the food chain. So that in turn means that for every unit of livestock food that we are getting, we need more than 1 unit of plant food to put into that livestock. So a diet based on livestock actually requires more plant crops than a diet based on plants, if that makes sense. There was a study from the United Nations that came out in 2006. They're the ones that coined the term livestock's large shadow, and it just raised issues of total land use all over the world that's used for grazing and raising animals. About 36% of the crops that we grow go to feed livestock. About 70% of all agricultural land that could be used for farming, is used for livestock, which turns out to be about 30% of the land surface of the earth, according to the United Nations. So that gives you an idea of kind of the environmental impact of livestock. I mean, you can draw your own conclusions from animal treatment. You know, obviously different people have different feelings about that, about the ethics of how livestock are treated. With this assignment, I'm going to have you watch a short video called The Matrix, and it is about factory farms. It's the basically industrialized agriculture for livestock. We saw a few videos where crop growing is industrialized, but livestock care has also become industrialized. And these factory farms are also called concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs. And these factory farms are just designed to maximize the output of livestock. So it's industrialized agriculture for livestock. So I'll show you a short video on that, and you can draw your own conclusions about how you feel livestock is raised. But in the discussion of how we continue to increase the world food supply or make the food supply more accessible to more people, I think the amount of meat that humans eat will continue to be an issue as we look for areas to improve, because livestock takes so much land, and as agricultural land becomes more and more scarce, using less of that land to raising animals and more of that land to raise plants that humans could just eat directly might become more and more important.